Hey guys, welcome back for another episode of Yubel Basics. In this one, I'm going to talk about around 10 tips, tricks, and rulings to explain a little bit of the details about playing the Yubel deck and some things that could come up in very niche situations that could win you games or change the way you play the deck. Starting off with tip number 1, this is basically an explanation of why Spirit of Yubel cannot search Nightmare Throne. So if we read Spirit of Yubel, when it's special summoned, you can search a card that mentions Yubel. Let me translate that. It searches you a card that mentions this specific card, Yubel, okay? These three cards, Nightmare Pain, Mature Chronicle, and Eternal Favorite, fit the bill, okay? They all mention Yubel. Nightmare Throne says in the text, Yubel Monster. And even though the text string Yubel is in Nightmare Throne, what Nightmare Throne mentions is not Yubel. It mentions this group of 4 monsters. These are all Yubel monsters because they have Yubel in the name, but they are not all this card. Spirit can only search something that mentions this specific card. Nightmare Throne mentions this group of cards, generic group of cards, and therefore it does not meet the search criteria of Spirit of Yubel, and you cannot search Nightmare Throne. Too bad. I wish you could. It would be awesome. Let's look at ruling number 2. We have our opponent with a Mirror Jade here, and let's say we have a Yubel on board with a Nightmare Pain. So this is just to clarify what kind of damage is going on. Let's say our opponent is attacking our Yubel, right? Yubel says we take no damage. Nightmare Pain says our opponent takes whatever damage we would take. So if we take no damage, does our opponent also take no damage? No. The ruling is that our opponent would still take the 3,000 life points. Basically what's going on is there's a difference of 3,000 attack here, and it's got to go somewhere. Yubel says it doesn't go to us. Nightmare Pain says it goes to our opponent instead. So that difference does get inflicted somewhere, and it's to our opponent because of Nightmare Pain's effect. And then another ruling that's kind of like a side note here is if we have activated Pot of Prosperity in this turn, and now we swing into the Mirror Jade, we take 0. Nightmare Pain says our opponent would take the damage we would take, and that damage is 3,000, but because we're under Prosperity, then our opponent is only taking 1,500. So Prosperity still affects whatever the battle damage is that Nightmare Pain is inflicting. It's almost like effect damage from Nightmare Pain. It's still halved because of Prosperity. Let's talk about some niche situations now. These are like turn 2, turn 3 situations. After you've comboed, after your opponent's comboed, whatever. These are some things that can come up. Let's say we have Nightmare Pain, Yubel, and Spirit, and our opponent is sitting on a Mirror Jade here. We want to win, okay? And we also have a Gruesome Grave Squirmer in hand, but we don't want to play into Nibiru. We think our opponent has Nib. So, you know, if we're in the main phase, you might have to, okay, special summon the Grave and link off, try to clear the Mirror Jade, deal with whatever else they might have. We don't have to deal with that. We don't have to play into Nibiru at all. Essentially, all we have to do is attack with Yubel, 3,000, attack with Spirit of Yubel, another 3,000 to our opponent because of Nightmare Pain, and then we can special summon in the battle phase Gruesome Grave Squirmer. And don't forget, Gruesome Grave Squirmer, when it's summoned on resolution, has the option to destroy a monster. So here we can destroy either one of these, but probably Yubel, and summon out a Terror Incarnate from our deck or graveyard, and then swing for the final 3,000 for game. So this is just a use of when you actually want to destroy something with Gruesome Grave Squirmer. You can do it in the battle phase just to get a little bit extra damage. If you did that in the main phase, you still would only have 2 attacks, but because we do it in the battle phase, we can attack with the Yubel first, then destroy it, then get the Terror Incarnate. So that's just a cool use of Gruesome Grave Squirmer. Similar thing kind of comes up with Unchained Soul of Yama sometimes. This tip is just a reminder that Yama has the effect when it's banished to summon back something, it can pop. Let's say we have Spirit of Yubel on board and we swing for 3,000 into the Mirror Jade, we summon the Grave Squirmer and pop the Spirit. And we have Yama in the grave. Well, now we can float into Yubel, and then Yama can banish itself to summon back the Spirit, and then Yama on summon, or Yama's effect on resolution can again pop one of these guys. This is not an ideal situation to use that because you still want to attack with both, but just a reminder that when you banish Yama to summon, you can pop on resolution if there's something else you wanted to destroy on your field. So let's move on to a couple that involve the trap card Eternal Favorite. There's a couple rulings here, a couple tips. First of all, if you intend to use this as a super polymerization, you should flip this up as soon as possible. Say you've set it on your turn, it's part of your combo, and you probably have a Yubel on board because you want to use it to clear your opponent's entire board, right? During your opponent's draw phase, you should be flipping this thing. And that's because if you want to use this as the super poly, it already has to be face up for you to use the effect discard a card and send it to summon out your Loving Defender. If you read the second effect of Eternal Favorite, it says send or discard one card and send this face-up card to the graveyard. Okay, so it already has to be face up. So if it's set here and our opponent summons a Mirror Jade, man, our opponent is playing branded all day. Our opponent summons a Mirror Jade. If we activate Eternal Favorite here, like, they can just chain and clear our Yubel before it resolves. Like, we cannot then chain Eternal Favorite to Super Poly. It has to resolve first. So essentially, by flipping it face up right away, it's ready to be used as Super Poly whenever you want. All right, let's look at the other effect of Eternal Favorite now. We have Spirit of Yubel in the graveyard, and we want to summon it back. But if we read our Eternal Favorite's first effect, it says neither player can activate cards or effects when that monster is special summoned. So if you activate Eternal Favorite just willy-nilly and summon out your Spirit of Yubel, you cannot search with Spirit of Yubel. However, there is an easy way to play around this, and that is your Eternal Favorite has to be Chainlink 2 or higher. Okay, so let's say we have Eternal Favorite set, Spirit in the graveyard over here. If we just activate Pot of Prosperity Chainlink 1, and then flip Eternal Favorite Chainlink 2, special summon Spirit of Yubel, then the Chainlink resolves, Yubel summons, we search with Prosperity, and in a new chain, Spirit of Yubel can activate. Why is that? It's because of how Eternal Favorite is worded. It says when a monster is special summoned by this effect, the last thing that happened in the previous chain was Pot of Prosperity resolving, and therefore Spirit of Yubel is allowed to activate. And this will also work on our opponent's turn, of course, right? So if we have Eternal Favorite set with Spirit of Yubel in the graveyard, wait for your opponent to activate anything, then chain Eternal Favorite, summoning out Spirit, and then Spirit can search. The next tip is a reminder about one of the best support cards in the Yubel deck is for opening of the Spirit Gates. It's just kind of like a PSA, like gentle reminder that opening has 3 effects, okay? The first one, of course, search Dark Beckoning Beast. The second one, discard a card to revive. But the third one, which comes up for Yubel, but I see people forget it all the time, is that you can add back a continuous spell from the graveyard for free. Okay, and that means essentially when you're using Spirit Gates, discard to summon back a monster. If you're summoning back, like, a Yubel of some kind, discard one of your continuous spells in your hand, and it's basically a free cost, okay? Like, discard an extra Nightmare Pain, summon out your Yubel, or Spirit of Yubel, and then after it's summoned, add back the Nightmare Pain for free. Like, it's just free card advantage that people are forgetting with opening the Spirit Gate, so it's just a reminder to do that whenever it comes up. The next tip has to do with Unchained Soul of Sharvara, and you may think that when this card is on the field, you are locked into special summoning fiend monsters. That's only partially true. That effect only is applicable when you've summoned Sharvara with its own effect. So let's say you have whatever, an extra Dark Beckoning Beast on board, and you activate Sharvara, pop the Dark Beckoning Beast, and boom, now you have Sharvara on board. You're locked into fiend monsters. However, if you eventually go up into your Promethean Princess and Princess bring back the Sharvara, you're not fiend locked anymore. Like, the fiend lock only applies when Sharvara summons by its own effect. Now you're of course fire locked, so you're probably going into Ambla Whale, but Ambla Whale is a machine. It's not a fiend, right? And that's totally legal because Sharvara is not locking you. So it's just good to keep in mind. Don't get tunneled into the thought that Sharvara means fiends only. That essentially wraps up all of the tips and tricks. I think that was like 9 or so. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that. Hopefully some of these things are useful or kind of clarifying to you. If you enjoyed, leave a like, sub to the channel. Yubel combo videos coming up in episode 3 and deck lists soon after that. All right, so we'll catch you guys soon.